It was a quiet evening on Earth when everything began to change. People were returning home after a long day, children were playing in parks, and the world was moving in its normal rhythm. No one knew that something strange, something unbelievable was about to appear in the sky. Far above the clouds, beyond the blue atmosphere, a small world was moving toward Earth. A world made of rock, metal, and deadly heat. A world older than time itself. This world was Mercury, the smallest planet in the solar system, but still far larger than anything humans had seen up close. In space, Mercury looked like a burned, damaged world, full of craters from ancient impacts. Its surface was dark gray and rough, like a giant piece of iron floating in the void. And tonight, for the first time in history, Mercury was going to pass between the Earth and the Moon. The narrator's voice begins calmly, almost whispering. He does not know yet, but the sky above him is about to change forever. A strange night begins high above. At the edge of our atmosphere, Mercury slowly approached. Its orbit had never taken it this close before, but this was not a normal universe. This was a what-if universe, a strange version of reality where planets moved in impossible ways. People on Earth were the first to notice something odd, not Mercury itself, but the moon. The moon looked slightly dimmer tonight, as if a shadow had touched its edge. At first, most people ignored it. Maybe it was just clouds, maybe it was the weather, but the moon kept getting dimmer and dimmer. Some people took out their phones and zoomed in. Some called their friends, some stood quietly in the street and stared. Something was wrong, something big. In observatories around the world, telescopes moved toward the moon. Astronomers looked through their eyepieces and froze. They were the first humans to truly understand what was happening. A scientist's voice cracked as he whispered, "This is impossible. Mercury is coming between us and the moon." Phones began to ring, emails exploded, alerts spread. Scientists ran through hallways shouting for others to look. A planet, an entire planet, was entering the space between Earth and its moon. This had never happened in the history of the solar system. The moon starts to shrink hour by hour. The moon became smaller, not actually smaller, but blocked. A dark shape, still far away but enormous compared to the moon, slowly crept into view. Mercury. Even though Mercury is small compared to Earth, it is still huge, almost 5 times larger than the moon. So when its dark, rocky face began to slide in front of the moon, people felt a chill inside their hearts. Children asked their parents what was happening. Parents looked at the sky, confused and scared, and said, I don't know. The narrator explains, Mercury is only 40% the size of Earth, but even a small planet becomes a giant when it stands at the distance of the moon. The moon faded further. The dark world covered more of it. Soon Mercury's edge, sharp and rocky, cut across the bright silver disk like a knife across paper. It was beautiful, but also frightening. The first gravity effects, even though Mercury was small, it still had gravity, and gravity works across space. So as Mercury came closer, the oceans of Earth responded. Tides began to rise, slowly at first, then higher. Not enough to destroy cities or cause panic, but enough for scientists to notice. Beach waves moved deeper inland. Fishermen felt their boats lift more than normal. Water levels on coasts rose by a few centimeters. Nothing dangerous, but very strange. The narrator tells the audience, even a small planet can pull on Earth's oceans. Mercury's gravity is weak, but not zero. This gave people something new to worry about. If this was happening with Mercury, what would happen if a bigger planet came later? But that question belonged to the future. For now, Mercury was the center of attention. The world watches. The sky night came. Darkness spread. But the sky did not stay black for long. A bright object suddenly appeared above the horizon. At first, it looked like a star, then bigger, then brighter, then enormous. Mercury had entered the perfect position, right between Earth and the moon. The light from the sun reflected off Mercury's surface. Craters glowed slightly. Ridges and cliffs created long shadows. The entire world looked like a burned gray marble shining in space. People across the planet saw Mercury with their naked eyes, and for the first time in human history they saw a new world, not through pictures, not through telescopes, but with their own eyes. A child whispered to his mother, "Is that another moon?" She answered softly, "No, that's a planet." And she still couldn't believe what she was saying. A rocky monster in the sky. As Mercury reached its closest point, something strange happened. It looked bigger than the moon, much bigger. It wasn't bright white like our moon. It was darker, heavier, and scarier. The narrator describes it powerfully. The moon is a gentle companion. Mercury is not. Mercury is a survivor, a world cooked by the sun. A world hit by thousands of asteroids. A world with no air, no sound, and no life. From Earth, people could see large scars on Mercury's surface, massive craters formed by ancient impacts. The biggest one, Caloris Basin, almost 500 kilometers wide, could be seen clearly like a giant dent. It was beautiful in a harsh way. A silent, dead world staring back at Earth. As Mercury passed in front of the moon disappeared completely behind it. The sky darkened. It looked like the moon had been swallowed by a giant stone beast. For a few minutes the world held its breath. No danger, yet scientists studied everything: gravity, tides, Earth's rotation, atmospheric pressure. The good news was, Mercury was not big enough to cause real disasters. There were no huge earthquakes, no extreme tidal waves, no atmospheric collapse. But there was still a strange feeling in the air. The narrator explains, human beings have lived with only one moon for thousands of years. Tonight they saw a different world replace it. Even though Mercury's mass was small compared to Earth, seeing it so close was emotional and a little terrifying. Night lights changed because Mercury was blocking some of the sunlight that normally reflects off the moon. The night became darker in some places. In other places, it became brighter because sunlight bounced directly off Mercury. Cities reported that the sky looked different, shadows were sharper, stars were dimmer, and the entire night had a strange silver-gray tone. It was like Earth had entered a different universe. Animals sensed the change too. Birds woke up at strange hours. Sea animals moved differently due to the odd tides. Even insects behaved in unusual ways. Earth felt confused. A historic moment. Millions of people around the world recorded videos. Millions more watched live streams. Every news channel talked about Mercury's pass. Never before had humans seen another planet so close. In a small village, an old man looked at Mercury and whispered, "I never thought I would see something like this before I die." In a big city, a group of friends stood on a rooftop and argued whether Mercury looked better than the moon. In schools, teachers brought students outside and explained that this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. The whole world united under this strange, rocky globe in the sky. Mercury begins to move away after hours of suspense. Mercury finally began to drift away from the moon's position. Slowly, the bright white moon peeked out from behind the dark planet. First a thin line, then a curved slice, then half the moon. People cheered, some cried, some just stared in silence. The narrator explains this moment. The moon, our oldest companion, returned to the sky like a shy friend coming out from behind a giant visitor. Mercury moved farther. The moon grew brighter. The world felt normal again. The final view of Mercury before disappearing from sight. Mercury shined one last time. It reflected sunlight beautifully, almost like a diamond in the darkness. It was as if the small planet was saying goodbye. The narrator adds, Mercury may be the smallest planet, but tonight it showed Earth how large the universe truly is. Then, slowly, Mercury slipped behind the shadow of the night and vanished from the sky. Part 1 conclusion: the world was filled with excitement and fear. People now understood that the solar system is full of giant worlds, and Mercury was only the first one. The narrator ends the episode with a powerful line. If Mercury alone could change the sky so much, what will happen when a bigger planet comes closer? The night after Mercury's strange pass, Earth was still talking. People were sharing photos, scientists were giving interviews, children were making drawings of the rocky planet that had replaced the moon for a short time. The world was returning to normal, or at least trying to. But space had a different plan. High above Earth, far beyond the clouds, another world had begun to move. A world much bigger, much brighter, and far more dangerous than Mercury. A world wrapped in thick clouds, full of deadly heat and crushing pressure. Venus, the second planet from the Sun, Earth's sister planet, but also Earth's worst nightmare. Tonight Venus was coming closer, and this time the world would not be ready. A strange light in the evening sky. It started with a glow. a soft, golden glow in the western sky, far brighter than usual. Most people thought it was just evening light or maybe a plane reflecting the sunset, but the glow did not fade. It grew stronger, sharper, more intense. A group of astronomers in Chile were the first to understand what they were seeing. Through their powerful telescope, the curved shape of Venus was visible, but larger, much larger. The scientists exchanged worried looks. This was not normal. One of them whispered, "Venus is moving into the moon's orbit." Emails flew across continents. Space agencies called emergency meetings. Satellites turned their cameras toward the incoming world. Something huge was coming, something that would change the sky again. The world feels the change as Venus moved closer. Earth began to feel small differences. Not dangerous, not yet, but strange. The night sky became brighter. Stars seemed weaker. The moon looked pale, like its light was fading. People across Earth noticed unusual shadows on the ground at night, long, soft, golden shadows. It was as if a second sun had appeared, hidden behind the darkness. The narrator explains, Venus reflects sunlight better than any planet. Even from far away, it shines like a cosmic torch. But tonight, that torch was coming very close. The brightest object humans have ever seen late at night. Something magical happened. A bright point appeared above the horizon, far brighter than any star, far brighter than Mercury had ever been. People stopped in the streets. Drivers pulled over on highways. Farmers stepped out of their fields and stared. The bright point grew bigger, and bigger, and bigger. Soon it wasn't a point. It was a glowing circle, a giant golden disk rising into the night sky. Venus. Covered in thick clouds of sulfuric acid, glowing with soft yellow light. The planet looked like a burning pearl floating above Earth. Millions of people grabbed their phones. Millions more simply stared with their mouths open. No one had ever seen a planet that bright. It was beautiful but frightening. The heat of a hell planet Venus is the hottest world in the solar system, hotter even than Mercury, even though it is farther from the sun. Its thick atmosphere traps heat like a giant pressure cooker. From Earth, none of the fires or lava could be seen, because Venus was covered in thick clouds. But those clouds reflected sunlight so strongly that the night became bright almost like early morning. A scientist in Tokyo said, "We are looking at a world of fire wrapped in light." Even though Venus was still far away, its brightness changed Earth's nights. Some cities turned off street lights because Venus was bright enough to walk under. Animals became confused. Birds began singing at midnight. Flowers opened early. Nature did not understand what was happening. Tides began to rise as Venus came closer to the moon's distance. The first real danger appeared. Tides rose. Unlike Mercury, Venus was heavy, almost as heavy as Earth. Its gravity pulled on Earth's ocean strongly. Water levels on beaches rose several centimeters, then several more, then more, still not dangerous but noticeable. Boats rocked harder. Ports felt unusual currents. Shorelines moved in ways they had never moved before. The narrator explains, when a giant like Venus comes close, the oceans listen. People began to feel nervous. What if Venus came even closer? What if the tides kept rising? Earth felt smaller, weaker. The moon disappears behind a golden giant as the night grew deeper. Venus moved exactly into position, directly in front of the moon. At first, the moon dimmed. Then it blurred. Then it faded completely behind Venus's glowing body. Earth now had a new moon, a giant golden one. Venus filled the sky with soft light. Its clouds swirled in slow, graceful motions. Its surface remained hidden, but its beauty was undeniable. The narrator whispers, for a moment, Earth had a second sun. People stood in silence. Some cried from emotion, some from fear. Even though Venus was deadly, even though it was filled with poison and fire, tonight it looked peaceful, gentle, almost alive. Strange colors spread across the sky because Venus's clouds reflected sunlight. The sky began to glow with strange colors. Soft yellows, faint greens, pale gold. Clouds near the horizon shimmered like liquid metal. Water on lakes reflected golden light. Even snowy mountains glowed faintly in the night. In some parts of the world, it almost looked like daytime. For the first time in history, children asked, "Is this night or day?" And parents had no answer. Earth's atmosphere reacts. Venus's gravity started to affect not only the oceans but also the atmosphere. Winds changed direction. Storms behaved unpredictably. Small pressure waves moved through the air. Not enough to destroy anything, but enough to confuse scientists. Weather models stopped working correctly. Predictions became impossible. Meteorologists were giving updates every hour instead of once a day. The narrator explains softly, "A giant world does not need to touch Earth to change it. Its presence alone is enough." A city's lights go out in Europe. A curious thing happened. A large city decided to turn off all its lights for 1 minute just to see how Venus looked. When the lights went off, people gasped. The streets were not dark. The sky was not black. Everything glowed with soft golden light from Venus. Shadows formed on walls. Trees cast long, gentle lines on the ground. It was like walking through a dream. Some people called it the most beautiful moment of their lives. Others called it the most frightening. Because beauty this powerful always brings fear. Scientists share a warning around midnight. Space agencies released a message. Venus is not dangerous at this distance, but if it moves any closer, strong gravitational effects may appear. People read the message and felt their hearts tighten. Any closer? Was Venus still coming closer, or was this its final position? No one knew. Earth listens to its neighbor. As Venus moved slowly across the sky, something emotional happened. Earth felt small. Humanity felt tiny. From this distance, Venus looked gentle. But everyone knew the truth. Its surface was a world of pressure so strong it could crush metal. Temperatures hot enough to melt lead, and winds that tore through its skies like blades. Yet here it was, hanging softly above Earth, glowing like a harmless lantern. The narrator says softly, "Sometimes even monsters look beautiful from far away." Venus begins to drift, but not away. Hours passed. Venus started to shift slowly to the side, exposing a small piece of the moon behind it. People sighed with relief. The moon slowly returned, but something else appeared too. A shadow. A massive shadow behind Venus. At first, people thought it was a cloud. Then they thought it was night fog, but telescopes zoomed in and saw something shocking. The shadow was round, huge, dark, bigger than Venus. A new object was approaching. The narrator's voice lowers. Venus was not alone. The world held its breath. What could be bigger than Venus? What was coming now? A scientist at NASA whispered, "It can't be. Not yet, not this soon," but it was. The next planet was arriving. A planet with red dust storms, frozen deserts, and ancient secrets. A planet humans have dreamed of visiting for centuries. A planet called Mars. The world had barely recovered from Venus's golden glow. People were still talking about the strange night skies, the unusual tides, the bright clouds, and the new shadows cast by the hell planet. But now something else had appeared. A darker shape. A rounder shape. A silent, mysterious visitor behind Venus. This visitor was moving slowly like a patient traveler. It was small at first, then bigger, then massive. It was Mars, the red planet. For generations, humans had dreamed of walking on Mars. They had imagined it, drawn it, filmed it, sent robots to touch its soil. But no one had imagined Mars would ever come this close. Tonight, Mars was going to enter the moon's orbit. Tonight, Earth would meet its red neighbor face to face. A red star that should not exist. It began as a red spark in the sky, too big to be a star, too steady to be an airplane. People saw it from rooftops, from beaches, from mountain roads. Even children pointed at the red dot and said, "Why is there a new star?" But it was no star. In a dark observatory in Spain, a young astronomer stared at the red light through his telescope. His heart jumped. He whispered to himself, "No, this is Mars. It's really Mars." He called his team. They checked again. Same answer. Mars was approaching Earth fast. News spread in minutes. Scientists everywhere stared at screens, running calculations, checking gravity models, monitoring tides. This time the world did not panic. This time the world was simply in awe. Earth had seen Mercury. Earth had seen Venus. Now Earth would see Mars, a world like our own. The red glow expands hour by hour. The red point grew brighter. It began to flicker as if fire moved inside it. Then the flicker turned into a glow. In deserts, the sky turned slightly red. In forests, the leaves reflected orange light. In snowy regions, the white ground glowed like burning coal. The narrator explains gently, Mars is covered in iron dust. Iron dust reflects sunlight as red light. When Mars comes close, it paints the sky in shades of fire. People across the world stood outside, mesmerized. "Is this safe?" one asked. "It looks beautiful," another said. "It looks like the world is bleeding," an old woman whispered. The red light carried emotion, fear, hope, curiosity. Mars was a mirror of Earth, but damaged, dry, lonely. Now that mirror was coming closer. Mars becomes a giant shape in the sky. By late evening, Mars was no longer a dot. It was a small circle, then a large circle, then a giant red disk floating above Earth. People could see patterns, dark streaks, bright patches, curved lines. These were Mars's deserts, mountains, and valleys. One feature stood out more than anything else, a dark oval shape, a massive shadow on the planet's surface. Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system, 3 times taller than Mount Everest, so big that it covered an entire region of Mars. From Earth, it looked like a sleeping giant. The narrator whispers, "When Mars comes close, humans can see the scars of a world that once lived." The red planet blocks the moon. As Mars approached the moon's distance, something magical happened. The moon began to fade. Its silver glow weakened. A giant red world slid in front of it. Soon the moon disappeared completely behind Mars's dusty horizon. Earth had seen Mercury replace the moon. Earth had seen Venus brighten the sky like a second sun. Now Earth saw Mars, a glowing red world, take the moon's place. For a moment, it felt like the sky was on fire. Earth's atmosphere reacts to Mars. Mars may be smaller than Earth, but it still has weight, huge weight. As it came close, Earth felt its pull. Tides rose again, higher than Mercury's rise, but lower than Venus's. Winds shifted in strange ways. Some regions experienced sudden warm air. Others felt sudden cold. Animals behaved oddly. Wolves howled long into the night. Birds migrated in unusual directions. Dogs barked for no reason. Sea creatures swam toward deeper waters. It was as if Earth's living creatures understood that another world was near. Mars was not deadly like Venus, but it was unsettling, like a stranger looking in through a window. A red fog across Earth in some regions, especially near coastlines. A strange reddish fog appeared. This fog was not from Mars, it was from Earth. Because Mars's red light was so strong, tiny particles in Earth's air reflected it. Water droplets, dust grains, and pollution turned red under the incoming light. People looked at the horizon and saw it glowing like a fire far away. A traveler on a highway whispered, "It feels like we are living on another planet." The first human emotions. As Mars grew huge in the sky, people experienced powerful emotions. Some felt hope. Mars was the planet humans dreamed of colonizing. Others felt sadness. Mars was a reminder of what Earth could become if it died. Others felt fear. Nothing about this was normal. A boy looking through his window asked, "Mom, is Mars dangerous?" She answered softly, "I don't know." For the first time, adults had no answers. A planet with secrets. Mars drifted closer, slowly rotating. Dark lines appeared, dried riverbeds, ancient lake beds, cracks from old earthquakes. People around the world began to see evidence that Mars had once held water. Millions whispered the same question, did Mars once have life? No one knew, but tonight the question felt bigger than ever. The narrator speaks with emotion. Mars is not just a planet, it is a story. A broken world that once dreamed of being like Earth. Now that broken world was standing above Earth, almost as if it wanted to come home. Olympus Mons faces Earth. When Mars reached its closest point, something breathtaking happened. The giant volcano Olympus Mons turned directly toward Earth. People looked up and saw a dark mountain thousands of kilometers wide staring back at them like a giant eye. Children screamed. Adults froze. Scientists stared in silence. A volcano taller than 3 Everests, bigger than entire countries, was now the most visible thing in the night sky. It felt impossible. It felt unreal. It felt like Mars was alive. A moment of pure silence. When Mars was centered between Earth and the Moon, an unusual silence spread across the planet. Not real silence, but a psychological one. Cars slowed down. People stopped talking. Animals froze. Everyone stared at the giant red world above them. For a few minutes, the world forgot everything: noise, problems, fear. Everyone simply watched Mars, a world filled with dust, storms, canyons, mountains, and mysteries, a world that had never been so close before. Mars begins to move as time passed. Mars slowly began to shift. It moved away from the moon's position. The moon peeked out from behind it, a thin silver curve. People took photos, people cried from relief. Mars was moving away, but something was strange. Mars wasn't moving back into space. It was moving sideways, like it was sliding along a path. Scientists looked again. Their hearts dropped. Mars was not leaving. Mars was making room. Something bigger was behind it, much bigger. A scientist whispered in shock, "No, no, no, it's too early for this." The narrator lowers his voice. Mars was only preparing the stage. The sky darkened. Stars vanished behind a massive shadow, a shadow so large it made Mars look tiny, a shadow with stripes, a shadow with storms. A shadow with a giant red mark like an enormous eye. The next planet had arrived. The monster of the solar system, Jupiter. For days, Earth had been living under strange skies. First Mercury appeared like a rocky scar. Then Venus came like a golden sun. Then Mars glowed red and silent above Earth. But now something else was rising. Something bigger than anything the human eye had ever seen. Something so massive that even Mars began to look like a small toy floating in space. It was Jupiter, the giant of giants, the king of the planets. A world so big it could swallow Earth more than 1,000 times. And tonight, Jupiter was coming into the moon's orbit. The universe had decided to push the limits of human fear and human wonder. A shadow bigger than the night before Jupiter was visible. Its shadow arrived first. People went outside expecting to see stars. But the sky was unusually dark. Lights flickered. Even the moon seemed weaker. Something enormous was blocking the starlight. A quiet voice from a rooftop whispered, "Is something covering the sky?" "Yes, something huge," the narrator explained slowly. "Jupiter is so large that even from a distance its shadow can swallow the night." Mars had moved aside, sliding away like a red curtain. Behind it, something enormous rose like a silent mountain in the sky. At first, people thought it was a cloud, but the shape was too perfect, too round, too massive. A scientist in Italy stared through her telescope and felt her heart stop. This is Jupiter. The first look at a giant. When Jupiter finally peaked above the horizon, gasps echoed across the world. It was not a dot, not a circle, not even just a giant planet. It was a wall. A planet so huge that it covered a massive portion of the sky. It looked like a striped world painted by cosmic storms. Bands of white, orange, and brown stretched across its surface like giant waves. Lightning could be seen inside its clouds, tiny flashes of light on a world 300 times heavier than Earth. People felt dizzy looking at it. Some stepped back. Some dropped their phones. Jupiter was not beautiful like Venus, not calm like Mars. Jupiter was overwhelming. The narrator whispers, "If planets were animals, Jupiter would be a giant whale swimming beside a small fish." The great red spot appears as Jupiter slowly rotated. Something terrifying came into view. A red oval, huge, dark, shaped like a monstrous eye, the great red spot. A storm larger than the entire Earth, a storm that has raged for centuries, swirling endlessly with winds faster than any hurricane on Earth. From Earth, it looked like a giant staring eye. Children screamed. Adults froze. Scientists held their breath. One man whispered, "It's looking at us." Of course it wasn't. It was only a storm. But tonight, fear made everything alive. The sky turned strange as Jupiter came closer. Its gravity reached Earth. Earth shook softly at first, just a little vibration like a giant heartbeat moving through the crust. Seismologists noticed small spikes. Nothing destructive, just unsettling. Tides rose higher than with Venus. Harbors saw waves pushing farther inward. Boats rocked violently in places. Rivers overflowed by a few inches. Not everyone understood the danger, but scientists knew. If Jupiter comes any closer, the oceans will not behave gently. The colors of a gas giant, Jupiter's glow spread across the sky. Not golden like Venus. Not red like Mars. It was a strange, mixed light, soft orange, pale white, faint brown. The sky looked like it was painted by the hands of an artist who had lost control of his colors. Clouds on Earth reflected Jupiter's stripes. Some clouds turned orange. Some turned white. Some looked like swirling storms. People looked up and felt like Earth had moved inside Jupiter's atmosphere. A traveler said, "It feels like the sky has gone mad." A monster that breathes from Earth. People could see movement inside Jupiter. Storms, winds, giant cloud bands moving sideways, lightning flashes like tiny sparks. Even though it was far away, Jupiter felt alive. Breathing, turning, watching. For the first time, people truly understood how huge and powerful planets can be. The narrator explains, Jupiter is not a solid planet. It is made of gas. It has no ground to stand on. It is a world of storms, a world of winds, a world that never rests. Seeing such a world so close made Earth feel tiny, fragile. Earth's atmosphere shudders as Jupiter approached the moon's exact distance. Earth experienced a change, not violent but unnatural. Winds moved in new patterns. Warm air rose faster. Cold air sank deeper. Clouds formed strange spirals. Weather stations became confused. Their models failed. Their predictions broke. Pilots flying at high altitude radioed, "Something is wrong with the air. Everything feels heavier." Air pressure shifted slightly around the globe. Nothing destructive, just different enough to scare everyone. Animals felt it too. Birds changed flight paths. Fish swam deeper. Dogs howled without reason. Earth was reacting to Jupiter's invisible touch. Jupiter blocks the entire moon. Then came the moment Earth had feared. Jupiter slid directly in front of the moon, and the moon vanished, disappeared completely. Not dimmed, not faint, gone. Because Jupiter was so big that it covered the moon entirely, like a mountain covering a pebble. People gasped. Some cried. Some knelt. A huge gas giant now sat exactly where the moon used to be. Humanity had replaced the moon with a monster. A moment of helpless awe. For a few minutes the world was silent. Cars stopped. Theaters paused movies. Restaurants grew quiet. Sports events froze. Everyone looked up. Imagine standing on Earth and seeing a world larger than anything you can imagine, hanging above you, blocking out half the stars. That was Jupiter. The narrator breathed softly. This is not a sky. This is a warning. Jupiter begins to turn, but something else appears. Hours passed. Jupiter slowly rotated away from the moon's line of sight. The moon peeked out, just a sliver of silver, but people noticed something strange. Jupiter wasn't leaving. It wasn't getting smaller. It was shifting sideways, the same way Mars had done earlier. Why? What was behind it? NASA scientists checked the sky. Their screens turned white, their faces froze. A scientist whispered, "No, this cannot be real." Another said, "It's impossible. Jupiter was bad enough, but this is worse." A shadow larger than Jupiter began to rise, a world with glowing rings. Rings stretching across the darkness like bright circles of ice and dust. Rings so big they shine like cosmic pathways. The narrator whispers, "It's Saturn." The ringed world was coming, and it was even closer than Jupiter. The cliffhanger grows as the light from Jupiter bends around Saturn's rings. Saturn was arriving. The world was still trembling from Jupiter's arrival. Cities were silent. News channels repeated the same shocking images. Families stayed awake at night, watching the sky with fear and wonder. Jupiter had shown humanity what a true giant looked like, a swirling storm world big enough to swallow Earth. But before Earth could recover, something else stepped out from behind Jupiter. Something even more unbelievable, a glowing arc. A thin, bright line stretching across the darkness like a cosmic blade. A ring, then another, and another, and another. Slowly, gently, beautifully, Saturn rose into the sky. The most elegant giant in the solar system. A world wrapped in shining rings made of ice, dust, and ancient secrets. Earth had never seen anything like this. The first touch of light, people across the planet saw it at the same moment. A soft white glow spread across the night sky, thin as silk, bright as starlight. It looked like a curve, a half circle, then a full circle. Not around Earth, but around a planet moving closer. A young girl in Brazil whispered, "Is that an angel's halo?" Her mother held her hand tightly. "No, my love, that is Saturn." The narrator explained softly, "Saturn's rings reflect sunlight like billions of tiny mirrors. Even before Saturn arrives, its rings appear like a glowing path in the darkness." As Saturn approached, the glow became sharper. The rings formed a grand arc above the horizon. People felt as if they were standing inside a giant cathedral of light. Saturn's body appears after the rings came the planet, a pale yellow sphere, stripes soft and gentle compared to Jupiter's violent storms. A world that seemed calm, quiet, peaceful. Saturn looked like a giant lantern floating in space. Scientists stared in awe. One whispered, "Jupiter was the king, but Saturn is the artist." The planet slowly rose higher, its rings shining like blades of ice, wider than any structure humans had ever imagined. If Saturn replaced Earth, its rings would stretch far beyond the moon. They were that huge. And now those rings were entering the moon's distance. A sky painted in light as Saturn came closer. The rings cast thin shadows across Earth. Not dark shadows, silver shadows. The sky looked like it had been brushed with long, bright strokes. Horizon to horizon, thin beams of light crossed each other like a cosmic web. People were speechless. Clouds glowed faintly. Water reflected the ring light like pure glass. Snowy mountains sparkled as if touched by magic. Even cities turned off their lights just to watch. A man in Canada murmured, "I have lived 70 years and I have never seen something this beautiful." Saturn was not frightening like Jupiter. It was breathtaking. It was almost too perfect. Gravity begins its work, beauty comes with power. As Saturn approached the moon's orbit, Earth felt its weight. Not as strong as Jupiter's weight, but strange in its own way. The pull of Saturn's rings stretched Earth's magnetic field slightly. Some regions saw faint, unusual auroras, silver lights dancing near the horizon. Birds became confused. Whales changed direction. Compasses shifted by tiny degrees, but the oceans felt the strongest touch. Tides rose and fell in odd patterns. One coast would rise while another would dip lower than normal. Scientists watched nervously. "Saturn's rings are affecting the water," one said. "It is small but unusual. Nothing dangerous yet." The rings become visible to the naked eye as Saturn reached halfway to the moon's distance. Something astonishing happened. The rings became crystal clear. No telescope, just human eyes. People saw individual layers, the brighter ring, the darker B ring, the thin C ring, the mysterious Cassini division, a dark line between rings from Earth. The rings looked like a giant cosmic road made of diamonds. Children laughed. Artists cried. Even soldiers on night duty stopped working to stare. The narrator says softly, "Humanity had dreamed of Saturn's rings. Tonight it sees them with naked eyes." The shadow of the rings as Saturn slid in front of the moon, something magical and a little eerie happened. The moon disappeared behind the rings first, not the planet. Thin shadows crossed the moon's surface. Dark lines slowly slid across its face like fingers covering a light. It looked like the moon was being sliced by gentle, glowing blades. People felt chills, not because it was dangerous, but because it was surreal. Earth's oldest companion, the moon, was being touched by a foreign world's rings. Then the planet itself moved in front of the moon and the moon vanished. A cosmic painting above Earth for hours, Saturn dominated the sky. Not violently, not fearfully, but peacefully. Its pale yellow body glowed softly. Rings stretched across half the heavens. Its shadow moved slowly across Earth. It looked like a painting brought to life. A teacher in Egypt held her students outside and pointed upward. "Look," she whispered, "this is what ancient people dreamed of seeing. We are lucky to be alive right now." Saturn made Earth feel like a fairy tale, but beneath the beauty, something else was happening. The rings brightened to a dangerous level without warning. The rings became brighter. Much brighter. Too bright. Saturn had angled itself perfectly so that sunlight reflected directly off the icy particles in the rings, millions of tiny mirrors pointing toward Earth. Cities began to glow in the night. Windows flashed with white light. Shadows grew sharp and long. People shielded their eyes. It wasn't harmful, but it was overwhelming. Earth felt as if someone had turned on a giant lamp in the sky. The narrator whispers, "Saturn's beauty was becoming too strong. Animals react to the light." Night animals became confused. Owls opened their eyes wide, unsure whether it was night or day. Bats refused to fly. Frogs stopped croaking. Cats stared at the glowing rings as if hypnotized. Even humans felt strange. Some felt dizzy, some felt emotional, some felt peaceful, some felt terrified. Nature did not understand the rings, nor did humanity. Earth looks like a different planet with Saturn above. Earth transformed. The seas glowed with ring light. Clouds formed silver edges. Forests looked like dark silhouettes under a bright band of ice. Cities turned off lights but still stayed bright. Earth looked alien, beautiful, unnatural. People began to whisper, "What if Saturn never leaves?" Scientists responded, "It must leave or Earth will face problems." But not tonight. Tonight, Saturn owned the sky. Saturn begins to shift, and something moves behind it after many hours. Saturn began to drift sideways, just like Mars and Jupiter had done. People felt relief. But astronomers watching closely noticed something strange behind Saturn. A faint blue glow, soft, gentle, cold. At first, many thought it was an illusion created by Saturn's rings, but the glow grew stronger, bluer, darker, larger. A scientist at NASA stared at the screen. "No, not now, not right after Saturn." Another scientist swallowed hard. "We're not ready for the next one." The narrator's voice becomes low. Saturn was not the last giant. Behind the glowing rings, a blue sphere began to rise. A planet spinning sideways, a world colder than winter, a planet wrapped in mystery. It was Uranus, and it was coming closer. Earth was glowing under Saturn's rings when the new light appeared. A soft, icy blue light rising slowly behind the shining arcs of Saturn. At first, people thought it was only a reflection from the rings, but the glow grew stronger, sharper, colder. A scientist in Japan froze as she stared at her telescope image. Her voice trembled. "This is Uranus, the sideways planet." Earth had just experienced the beauty of Saturn's rings, and before it could breathe, before it could rest, before it could understand what was happening, another giant was arriving. The cold glow of Uranus, unlike Jupiter's violent storms or Saturn's glowing rings, Uranus came in silence. No bright stripes, no massive storms, no burning colors. Just a soft, pale blue sphere rising in the darkness like a cold pearl. People across the world felt something unusual, not fear, not excitement, a strange kind of calm. A man in Russia whispered, "It looks peaceful, too peaceful." The narrator explained softly, "Uranus is the quiet giant, a frozen world spinning on its side, its poles facing the sun. A planet shaped by silence." The closer Uranus came, the stronger the blue glow became, not bright, not warm, but eerie, cold, and lonely. A planet that spins wrong. One of the strangest things about Uranus is its tilt. It rolls around the sun like a ball lying on its side. Now, as it approached Earth's moon distance, humans saw this tilt clearly. The planet was not upright like Jupiter. It was not gently angled like Earth. It was lying sideways, as if an invisible hand had knocked it over. Children pointed and asked, "Why is the planet lying down?" Parents had no answer. Even scientists had only theories. A huge cosmic impact, a collision with a world-sized object, a hit so powerful it knocked Uranus sideways forever. Tonight, Earth saw the scar of that ancient trauma with its own eyes. The world turns blue as Uranus filled the sky. Earth changed. Not physically, but visually. Night skies became a soft shade of icy blue. Snow reflected faint aqua colors. Oceans looked darker, as if frozen from above. Clouds shimmered pale cyan like cold smoke in the sky. Earth looked like a twin of Uranus, a blue world under a blue giant. People whispered, "It feels like winter even though it's summer." Uranus had not touched Earth. Its gravity was weak at this distance, but its presence changed the mood of the planet. It felt colder, quieter, lonelier. The rings of Uranus reveal themselves. Most people on Earth didn't know Uranus even had rings. But tonight, they saw them clearly. Thin, dark, sharp, not wide like Saturn's rings, not bright like ice, more like shadows painted around a ghostly moon. As Uranus moved closer to the moon's path, the rings became visible to the naked eye. 2 thick rings, several faint rings, all tilted sideways, circling the planet like a spinning coin. The narrator explains, "Where Saturn's rings are music, Uranus's rings are whispers." These rings cast small shadows in the night, dark lines across clouds like thin scratches across the sky. People felt uneasy, not scared but unsettled. There is beauty in silence, but there is also mystery. The moon disappears behind Uranus as Uranus slid directly in front of the moon. Earth gasped. The moon vanished, gone in an instant, swallowed by the pale blue world. For a moment, it looked like Earth had gained a second icy moon. A giant moon, a cold moon, a tilted moon. People watched in awe. Then something strange happened. Uranus seemed to glow brighter, not from the sun, but from Earth. Sunlight reflecting off Earth's clouds bounced toward Uranus, making its atmosphere shine like soft blue fire. It was the first time in history that two planets lit each other. Earth feels a strange pull when Uranus reached its closest distance. Earth felt something, not the strong gravity of Jupiter, not the ring-caused pressure changes of Saturn, a gentle tug like a light hand pulling on Earth's oceans. Tides rose only slightly, barely noticeable, but measurable. Some birds changed migration paths. Some deep-sea animals rose closer to the surface. Some insects glowed faintly in the night, reacting to the strange blue light. Earth was responding quietly to a quiet giant. The calm before the deep blue storm hours passed. Uranus moved slowly across the sky, peaceful and silent. People relaxed. Children played under the blue sky. Cities held gatherings to watch the rare event. Saturn had brought beauty. Jupiter had brought fear. Mars had brought hope. Uranus brought calm, but calm never lasts in space. Before Uranus had even finished crossing the moon's path, astronomers noticed something behind it. A darker blue, deeper, more intense. At first it seemed like a shadow. But the shadow grew, spreading, thickening, darkening. A scientist in France whispered, that is not a shadow, that is something else. The narrator lowers his voice. The second blue giant had arrived. The arrival of Neptune. When Neptune first appeared, it was only a faint dot, small, dim, almost invisible. But slowly, like a slow-moving storm, it grew larger, then clearer, then magnificent. A deep, royal blue world, darker than Uranus, more dramatic, more powerful. And unlike Uranus, Neptune moved with energy. Its atmosphere swirled with fast winds, the fastest winds in the entire solar system. Dark storms, spinning clouds, flashes inside its deep blue body. People felt chills. One teenager whispered, "It looks angry." Neptune was not angry, but it was alive. Earth feels the wind of a distant world. As Neptune approached, something new happened. Earth's winds changed. Not violently, but noticeably. Small gusts appeared in places where air usually stayed calm. Cold breezes brushed across warm cities. Clouds shifted quicker. Airports paused flights for safety. Meteorologists were confused. "We are getting wind patterns we don't normally receive," one said. Neptune's atmosphere was moving Earth's atmosphere from a distance of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The narrator explains. When giant planets move, their gravity brushes the air of other worlds. Earth was feeling Neptune's breath. A blue night unlike any before. By the time Neptune reached the moon's distance, Earth looked unreal. The sky was deep blue. The clouds glowed faint blue-white. Even the oceans blended with Neptune's color until Earth looked like Neptune's reflection. People called it the night of the twin worlds. For the first time in history, Earth looked like its faraway cousin, a world of oceans and storms. But Neptune was not peaceful like Uranus. It pulsed, it shifted, it roared silently. Earth felt the pressure. The deep storm reveals itself as Neptune turned. A massive dark spot appeared on its surface. The great dark spot, a storm the size of Earth, spinning, growing, shifting. People froze. It looks like a hole. It looks like a storm. It looks like it's alive. It looks like it's coming closer. The storm rotated directly toward Earth. The blue light brightened. The winds on Earth picked up. Even animals reacted. Dogs barked. Birds retreated. Whales moved deeper into the ocean. Neptune's storm was strong enough to affect another world. The last move and the last fear hours passed. Neptune began to drift sideways just as Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn had before. People sighed with relief. The blue giants were leaving, but astronomers were not relieved. They were silent. They were staring at the space behind Neptune. Dark, empty, too empty. A scientist whispered, "Where is it?" Another scientist checked again. "It should be there, but it's not." The narrator lowers his voice to a whisper. One more world remains. The largest icy world, the king of the dark outer solar system, the wandering planet, and it was missing. Suddenly, a tiny distant flash appeared, dim, cold, far away, yet growing, a world with no warmth, no mercy, no light, something moving in from the edge of space. The final threat, the final visitor.